some football talk and some grim recapping with the man, Lance Roppers. Lance, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling great. It's Friday. Life is good. Sun came up this morning. Everybody's breathing. So life's good. How about you guys?
I feel the same way, man.
Fantastic, man. I'm ready to dive into this one, man. I was there in person, so it was.
I'm sorry to hear that.
It was. Listen, I had a smile on my face after the game. After I got on the post game show that live, I got to Buc-ee's within 15-20 minutes after the game. Lance, I couldn't have been upset.
Well, I certainly was. I know you were, Lance, and watching it at home without the benefit of Buc-ee's, but. This is now November 7th, and it seems like every single year, we all know this is the month where things either go from bad to worse or they go from good to bad. Lately, it's been good to bad, so we've at least been better going in, but it's not been good. The thought is...
Yeah, for sure. I think...
go ahead, Lance. I was going to say just the tendencies of this team. Now... on full display, September, October, and now November, we see an adjustment. What is happening? We don't have to relitigate the last 20 years, but this particular year, what are teams seeing? What are you seeing when you review this that's allowing them to take advantage here in November?
Yeah, it's pretty much a familiar theme, right, with what you've seen from Mario Cristobal coach teams. Especially during his time in Miami. My theory is basically that at the beginning of the year, Miami comes out, they have their foundation, they have kind of their staple. Tendencies haven't been established yet. And when I say tendencies, I mean just basically what a coach is going to revert to in key moments of games, right? You can kind of predict what most coaches are going to do based just on past experiences. And they've got all these analysts that are essentially reviewing all of that, right? And putting together what do they do on 3rd and 5? What do they do on 3rd and 3? What do they do, in every situation? And as you get a little bit more of those games and you have a little bit more data available, coaches are a lot more confident in what your tendencies are going to be. What you see from a lot of coaches is you see some self-scouting as the year goes along, and they say, okay, guys, we've pretty well established that we're going to do X, Y, Z. If you watch our film, we need to have some counters to that, and we need to, proactively build those in. You saw Louisville has done that. Louisville has really changed their offense from the first 5-6 games of the year to one where they're really running more horizontal. Brown getting healthy really helped with that. But they've inserted their tight ends in different ways than they did to start the year. And that's really broken a lot of the rules for the defenses that are playing them. And you're seeing that in their scripts especially. So they're getting off to some of those fast starts against teams, especially against Miami. You've seen SMU has really kind of moved away from, maybe a run heavy scheme that they've had in the past where they really run a lot of that super pace and get their run game going to where they've really relied on Jennings just a little bit more to throw the ball and really make decisions at the line of scrimmage. And so that's another tendency breaker that they've kind of moved towards. Miami has not really changed their tendencies. In fact, from what I'm seeing, they're leaning into their tendencies more. So what is happening is they're really increasing their conservatism and trying to search for that comfort. This is me thinking what they're probably doing. They haven't called me and told me, but they're looking for that comfort, right? On what is it that is our core competency, and it's that line of scrimmage, it's that power in the offensive line, it's those condensed splits. Yeah, right. It's those condensed splits. It's, staying ahead of schedule, getting 3-4 yards on every play, as opposed to, getting some of those negative plays. I have really seen Miami on offense has leaned into, we're going to just make sure that we keep the ball and we don't mess up. And what's happening is that's inviting a lot of variance into these games. There were plays that when I was reviewing the SMU where all 11 of the SMU defenders were in the box on 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, right? And as a defense, you simply cannot cover the entire field in that alignment, you are absolutely relying on the fact that your opponent is going to run into that space if you defend it that way. And Miami has done so repeatedly. On the board, there's someone who keeps, repeating that something like 22 straight 3rd and 4th and 1 and 2s they've run, inside. I haven't verified that myself, but you can certainly see it on film, right? That this is a trend that they're doing. And when I'm talking about tendencies, right? Everybody's going to have their plays that they revert to, that they're going to run, right? 60, 70% of the time. That's okay. But you do need to balance that with, having counters off of that a certain percentage of times to really kind of put that doubt into the mind of your opponent, right? Last year, you saw that often. You saw a pretty famous 4th and 1, where Cam play fakes and hits Arroyo down the middle of the field. Some of those things, if you had the confidence in your quarterback to be able to make those plays, I do believe that you might see that more often. But we are running into some familiar patterns with Beck as well. Multiple times I have pointed out that, Carson Beck tends to make mistakes when you change the picture post-snap on him. And his interceptions tend to be exactly that, right? Where his first read, he expects to be able to hit his glance or his choice to the slot. Those are something that, Miami's offense really leans into, those two in particular. And what is happening is the defense is changing their alignment and the way that they're covering that glance and choice post-snap. And Beck's mechanics are kind of falling apart. The ball's sailing on him or it's late. And that's where we're really seeing interceptions. It's not from a quarterback IQ standpoint as much as he is having the picture changed on him and then his mechanics are falling apart. So those are some of the things that I'm seeing.
Luke Kane, our buddy, he's talked a little bit about Beck being much better pre-snap than post-snap. So I hear that. Well, what I'm thinking is 3rd and short, 4th and short, they have to respect your power run game. You got a guy who's won 30 games in college, and I was talking to some NFL people. I mean, not to act like I'm some kind of insider with the NFL, but there's people I know that work in that league who have evaluated Beck, and they still think he's like, maybe not 1st round pick, but he'll get picked maybe somewhere late day 2 or day 2, early day 3. If you can't beat a defense that is playing the run with numbers, with a quarterback that's a mid-round pick, would be probably a higher draft pick than any of our quarterbacks we've had since Steve Walsh, besides Ward, and then has all that experience, like, what do you need to beat a loaded box with the pass? That's like, how much do we need to catch teams off guard in these short yardage situations?
I mean, there are so many counters that are available to what the defense is doing and showing on those short yardage plays that Miami is completely ignoring. So I don't know the play call, obviously. I don't know what freedom Beck has at the line of scrimmage to be able to make some of these checks. But we've all heard Dawson. We've all heard Lashley. We've all heard Braum. We've heard these established, high-end, well-respected offensive coordinators talk about the fact that playing quarterback at the line of scrimmage is a numbers game in so many ways, right? You get to the line of scrimmage, it's a numbers. If they have 7, 8, then you're going to do this. If they have 5, you're going to run this. And what I'm seeing is a quarterback who is being very robotic in running the play over and over and over. And there aren't any checks at the line of scrimmage. There's no way that you can convince me on the 4th yard or the 4th and 1 that was stuffed, where we have a scat back running the ball, by the way, and we have 11 defenders inside the tackle boxes. A couple of them are covering wide receivers, but they're still at the line of scrimmage. You have 11 defenders right in that area. Are you telling me that you don't have a glance? You don't have a fast to flat. You don't have a boot. You don't have a read that a quarterback can check into at the line of scrimmage on a 4th down play in opponent territory, because if that's the case, then we have coaching malpractice. And I don't believe that we have coaches that are inept, right? I do believe they know what they're doing to get to this level and to hold their jobs as long as they have. I think right now you've got a confidence problem in your quarterback. I think you've got a situation where he either doesn't have the freedom or he doesn't have the confidence to make some of those checks. And I think at this point, you have defenses that have established what they're going to do to Miami, and it's up to Miami to really make their counters now. All of this is like a beautiful dance, right? Where, one opponent comes out and something's working, and then, you're going to make a counter to it, and then offenses are going to adjust, defenses are going to adjust. We've seen it for 30 years, right? We've seen the spread revolution. We've seen the mint tight fit revolution. We've seen Rip Liz revolution for the pattern match coverages. We've seen all these revolutions that are happening throughout sports. And now it's just the same thing, right? Where this offense that Miami is running, defenses are countering and saying, what are you going to do to beat this now? And then in the last several games, Miami hasn't been able to, whether that's because they want to continue to be stubborn and force that, inside run because that's their identity, or because they just don't have the counters available to them right now for whatever reason.
Lance, it looks like the personnel is going to be a little different this week in terms of CJ Daniels questionable here, and I don't expect him to play. Tony Johnson's been listed as out as well. We've seen them obviously be pretty hard-headed, I guess the word would be, in terms of the personnel they're using two tight ends as much as they have been, even though neither of them have been effective for the most part. So now that you're going to be missing a couple receivers here, we saw what JoJo did last week. I mean, was there anything you saw from, and we bring it up every week, but I think it is important. We have to mention the aspect that he brought to the offense last week. I mean, anything you saw there that could be built upon?
Yeah, so I'm still a little bit of a fuzzy connection and really didn't catch your question there. I think you're kind of asking about, like, with the two tight ends maybe not contributing as much as possible and some of the receivers out. What am I seeing from them? Is that a pretty good paraphrase on what
and with what JoJo did last week? I mean, anything you saw there that could kind of be built upon, excuse me.
Yeah, I think you saw exactly what you've seen from JoJo for the last couple of years, right? You've seen a very talented player that has the ability to make some big plays, but he also can't always be trusted. I believe that interception that, he caused by having the ball go right off of his hands was the turning point in this game, right? I believe if that doesn't happen, Miami wins this game and probably wins it by double digits. He has in my opinion, he has a flaw in the way that he is trying to catch those balls and cradle them. I've gotten some pushback from more than one person, so I could be wrong. That could absolutely be the way that they're coaching that. But in my opinion, the way that they're trying to soft cradle that ball on some of those plays is going to lend itself to that variance that you saw, right? He caught one and had a nice touchdown, great play, really kind of got the game going for them. But then the other one was a perfect throw that, kind of bounced off his hands to a defender and led to a touchdown the other way. And instead of, Miami being up by 2 scores, now it's a tie game. I believe that, you really just have a player right now that's difficult to trust. All the talent in the world, but, is he going to put it together and do and be and get into the spots that he's supposed to? I saw a little bit of both for him. And, he also made a heck of a catch down the sideline, another point down in the game, right, where we actually, I believe, on that drive got stopped. It was, yeah. And I believe in that drive is when we had all the penalties and kind of got pushed back out of field goal range, and just really that's its own little category of all the penalties and the mistakes that the offense is making at this point. They're self-inflicted. I think you got to continue to ride JoJo. I think you got to continue to put him out there, work on some of that consistency. That's going to be one of the ways that it happens because he's so much more talented than some of the other players that have gotten opportunities, and because he brings that vertical dimension that maybe some of the others haven't. I haven't believed that Keelan Marion has been especially consistent or, done the things that JoJo I just kind of criticized for. to enough degree to play him over JoJo personally. So that's kind of my thought on that.
Lance, before we go any further, let's talk about the folks who make this possible here to do the segment upon further review with Lance Roffers, and that's Kanata Financial. You own a small business like myself. Don't be your accountant. Don't be your bookkeeper. There's too much time that you're wasting doing that, and you can be focusing on being your CEO and building the business. Call Kanata Financial to be your bookkeeper, be your accountant, be your CFO, and allow you to do what you do. All right, Lance? You know, you're a numbers guy.
Yeah, so this is kind of what I do, and I do it for large corporations, and I see it all the time. I see people that want to kind of plug in their numbers or create plans for themselves, and what really can happen a lot of times is you're using data in a way that's mostly correct, but maybe it misses out on a big picture. You lose an opportunity. We're all focused on what our contribution margin is, and maybe we're getting a decent contribution margin with some of the decisions that we're making, but we're leaving some on the table because we're either misunderstanding the data or not forecasting in a way that we could. We do the bookkeeping, but maybe we don't do it quite as streamlined as we could, or we're missing out on some opportunities. I think that the cost benefit analysis that these small businesses are going to make is really going to tilt towards using a pro like our friend at Kanata Financial. And he's one of us. He's a Canes fan as well, transplant out there in Atlanta, but still comes out and sees all this for the last several years. So give him a call, visit his website at kanatafinancial.com and let's take that off of our hands and get back to running your business and growing it the way you need to.
Yeah, shout out to Sebastian, lifelong Canes, 786-213-3909 or kanatafinancial.com. That's 2 N's, Kanata Financial. So Lance, I don't want to have you as long today, so I want to make sure we get to this. You've seen the film painstakingly. There's 4 games left. Obviously, there's a lot of disappointment. There's a lot of concern about this whole future being out of our hands with the playoff and everything else. But these are 4 very important games. You're not going to change everything on November 7th. What are some things that Miami can do now, realistically, to give them a better chance to go 4-0 and then potentially move into the postseason and do some damage there?
Yeah, they've got to do exactly what we've talked about all pods so far. They've got to self-scout, identify what those tendencies are and what it is that the defenses right now are doing to them to really cause them problems. I'll tell you, right now, what I've seen the last 3 weeks, and I got some notes over here, which is why I'm looking off to the side. But, Miami's passing game, they're really built around first read leverage wins. So they want to give the quarterback, any air raid wants to simplify plays, right, and make it where the quarterback just has that first read available and open. And, they really thrive on choice routes, which is something that I really enjoy. And I think, you've got a star wide receiver who runs choice routes excellently. So given that option, I have no problems with building your offense that way. They really like to run that glance post off of RPO. And, you kind of saw they don't just run a glance post. They also run a glance choice, honestly. And that choice a lot of times is a whip because Tony runs that so well. Your slot really runs your choice a lot in this offense. And we've got a lot of half field progression concepts. If you read my upon further reviews, I've criticized Beck more than once about the fact that, he's missed something on the far side or the short side, whichever one it's going to be. And a lot of that runs from the fact that we're running half field progression concepts. When I really dive into it, you can see that the quarterback's really not even looking at the read that I'm saying he's missing post snap. Most likely that's the 1. If you think about, progressions as a 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And the 1 a lot of times in an air raid offense is going to be pre-snap. And so if he's open pre-snap, you're going there. But if he's not, post-snap, you're not even looking there a lot of times as your quarterback. I like a quarterback who's not a robot and can still, make a play and do those things. But that really hasn't been back to this point. So what defenses are doing is they're starting in too high right now. They're really trying to invite that glance because Miami runs it so much, and that's so much of a tendency for them. And then what they're doing is they're rotating late. So after the snap, and I talk about post-snap a lot, changing that picture, which is taking away that glance window. And once Beck sees that glance window go away, what you see it on film, his base, his mechanics are falling apart, right? His base is narrowing, his shoulders are closing, and you're seeing that ball float. And whether it floats and gets tipped and intercepted, or whether it floats in the sense that it's losing velocity, that is something you're seeing a lot with Beck over these last 3 weeks, as defenses are really trying to have late rotation pressure on him. He's such a first read, pre-snap, based quarterback. He's really timing based. He wants to get the ball out quick. He wants to hit that first read. And if that first read is open, I think Beck's an elite quarterback. That's why he's going to be an NFL quarterback, right? He's got the size, he's got the arm, he has the intelligence. It's just the same thing you see with the Dolphins and with Tua and those people, right? Where if the picture's changing post-snap, right now things are falling apart for him and he's not having the ability to make some of those plays. And it's the same thing I saw at Georgia. I called this out before the Louisville game and said I hope that Louisville doesn't do that too much and get turnovers. We've seen it come to fruition. And to answer your question in a very long-winded way, Miami has to have an answer to that, to the fact that Stanford did the same thing, guys. And, it really impacted us in the first half of that game. And second half of the game, obviously they were able to take control a little bit with some turnovers and some physicality that started winning. But that's what's really started to happen. And so SMU, they did the same thing. They ran too high pre-snap, but they ended up running single or post safety 83% of their snaps in that game. Pre-snap, they showed too high more than 50% of the time. So if you just kind of do the conversion of the math there, that's how often they were changing the picture post-snap, and it really bothered Beck.
How much longer we got you, Lance?
Yeah, you got me another 10 minutes or so.
Beautiful. All right. On the defensive side of the ball, just what are you seeing from Miami's defense? I thought they were pretty good here until obviously overtime when they threw in the towel, which is disappointing to see. There's some comments about maybe you press a little bit more, right? You got big athletic corners who can press. Why are you not getting into it, disrupting some of these routes? Do you have any thoughts on the way we're playing with our corners and the defense in general?
Yeah, so it's a safety-based system. So much in the secondary. You really want to be able to rotate those guys, insert them into different places. That's why you're really running a lot of bail and off coverage, right? To kind of protect for the fact that your safeties aren't going to be where they are pre-snap in this defense the majority of the time, right? And in this system, you're asking your defensive end, your four eyes a lot of time to spill. I've talked all about that, right? Kind of getting on the outside shoulder of the offensive tackle or Roscoe. You hear me say that a lot, rush outside, contain on edge. You've got your outside linebacker, your overhang, whichever one it is. He's going to lever and cap. So he's going to be leveraging. He's going to be capping outside or capping, C gaps, trying to force things back inside. Your inside backers, again, I kind of talked about them a lot as well. They're really trying to fill fast, right? So they want to get downhill. They want to be vertical, which plays into, Teray and some of those people's strengths of getting downhill and vertical. So that's absolutely something you want your inside backers to do. But your safeties, they've got to fill late. They've got to, identify route contributions. They've got to be creepers in this offense, which is just like it sounds, right? They kind of creep into a fit or they creep into a pressure package. What is happening so much right now, offenses are using condensed splits to identify where those creepers are going to be coming in, right? Because they get a step in, they identify where that overhang is, and they're sliding their center to the overhang because Miami, again, has those tendencies. They have the tendencies on offense, but they're doing the same on defense as well. And offenses have correctly identified that and are sliding their center to the overhang side. So often right now, that's where the pressure is coming from. And so those creepers, when you have an overhang drop out and a creeper settle in, it's no longer a 5 pressure package. It's now just 4 with a defensive end or an overhang offensive lineman like a Lightfoot trying to drop and cover. And that's not what you want at all, right? And so offenses are catching the defense's post-snap rotations, which is the opposite problem the offense is having, right? So Stanford, they did a great job of identifying the creeper side pre-snap. And that was just a static 4-man rush with a defensive lineman dropping. I kind of talked about that. Louisville used those condensed formations. I talked about it on this very podcast that they were going to use those formations to really be able to widen Miami's apex and get some of those gap bubbles and some of those crossers behind to where your linebackers are late or they're too shallow. And so they hit it behind. They did that with Bell several times in that game. SMU, they really they abandoned their run in this game and just identified that, hey, we can fill the post-snap picture of what Miami's trying to do over and over and over with that glance, with that comeback, with that fast to flat. And it took Miami a little time to adjust on that in the second half. And in fact, maybe they never really did, right? Because of the way that overtime period went. But those are the things that I'm seeing on film. I'm seeing tendencies on both sides. I've seen the last 3 weeks, offenses have kind of identified what some of those weaknesses are and are attacking it. I don't think our weakness is really so much just the fact that we're not pressing or doing some of those things. I think it's the offenses have identified a little bit of the weaknesses of Miami's system, which those mint tight fronts, we've kind of already talked about what those weaknesses are. And now it's up to Miami's defense to adjust to what the offense is doing.
Lance, I know it's Syracuse week, but you talked a lot about Josh Gaddis, creeper there. I wasn't expecting that. Anyways, more about defensive line. Ruben Bain, I